For nearly 2 millennia, the Christian world has rested upon a foundation of 4 texts: the Gospels according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They have been read as sacred records, memorized by children, preached by priests, and cited as the most authoritative testimony about the life of Jesus of Nazareth. They are the cornerstone upon which faith in Christ is built, the written witnesses to God incarnate. And yet, when one begins to examine them not through the lens of devotion, but through the lens of history, cracks emerge in the stone. The confident surface begins to tremble. What at first appears to be the bedrock of truth begins to look suspiciously like a carefully crafted edifice. An edifice erected not for accuracy, but for survival, power, and persuasion. This realization is not the product of idle conspiracy or casual skepticism. It is born out of generations of historical critical scholarship, textual analysis, and the painstaking comparison of manuscripts. It confronts us with a simple, unsettling fact. The Gospels are not eyewitness accounts. They are anonymous, written decades after Jesus' death, in a language he never spoke, and attributed only later to figures who never put pen to parchment. The first shock comes in realizing that the Gospels were not written by Matthew the tax collector, Mark the companion of Peter, Luke the physician, or John the beloved disciple. Their names were attached to the writings long after they were composed, likely in the 2nd century, when church leaders needed to give anonymous writings the aura of apostolic credibility. The earliest manuscripts contain no authorial names. They are simply according to, a later gloss imposed by those who sought to canonize them. This practice, assigning authoritative names to anonymous works, was not uncommon in antiquity, yet it raises profound questions. If the early Christians were merely concerned with passing on the truth, why disguise their sources? Why cloak them in pseudonymous authority? The answer is uncomfortably clear. Stories carry more weight when linked to the apostles themselves. The timeline of the Gospels is equally troubling. Jesus died around the year 30 or 33 AD, yet the first Gospel, Mark, was not composed until about 70 AD, nearly 40 years later. Matthew and Luke followed in the 80s or 90s, and John came at the end of the 1st century or even into the 2nd. By then, an entire generation had passed. Think of how quickly stories about public figures mutate in just a decade. Details shift, legends grow, memories blur. Now extend that process over 40 or 60 years. When one compares the Gospels side by side, another revelation emerges: dependence and contradiction. Matthew and Luke both copy large sections of Mark, sometimes word for word. This is not theory, it is demonstrable fact, visible to anyone who lines up the passages in parallel. But this raises a glaring question. If Matthew truly walked with Jesus, why would he need to copy from someone who did not? Beyond copying, the contradictions between the Gospels multiply. Did one angel appear at the tomb or two? Did Jesus die before or after the Passover meal? What were his final words on the cross? Each Gospel gives a different answer. These are not trivial details, they are central moments. The contradictions cannot all be harmonized. Instead, they reveal theological editing. Each author shaped Jesus to serve the needs of their community, not to preserve history. The most telling pattern is the steady evolution of Jesus' identity across the Gospels. In Mark, the earliest Gospel, Jesus is strikingly human. By the time of Matthew and Luke, Jesus has been upgraded. He now has a miraculous birth, genealogies linking him to King David, and a childhood shaped by prophecy. By John, the process reaches its climax. Jesus is no longer simply God's messenger, he is God himself, the Logos made flesh, declaring his divinity openly in grand poetic discourses. Even more disturbing than the contradictions is the process by which 4 Gospels were chosen from many. In the first centuries of Christianity, dozens of Gospels circulated. But diversity was inconvenient. As Christianity became entwined with imperial power, especially under Constantine, uniformity was needed. They chose the texts that would serve as tools of unity and control, discarding the rest as heresy. Another layer of complexity emerges when we consider the language. Jesus spoke Aramaic, Yet the Gospels are written in Greek by authors who were not native to the culture they describe. The most famous example is Matthew's use of Isaiah. Behold, a virgin shall conceive. The Hebrew word simply meant young woman. The mistranslation in Greek gave rise to the doctrine of the virgin birth, a cornerstone of Christian theology built on a linguistic accident. The Gospels are not transparent windows to Jesus. They are stained glass, beautiful, colored, shaped to inspire awe, but not clear. It means the real Jesus has been buried under layers of interpretation, propaganda, and myth. The peasant preacher from Galilee is almost invisible beneath the Christ of faith. And once we know this, we are faced with a choice. Do we cling to the illusion, continuing to build on a cracked foundation, or do we dig deeper, seeking the Jesus hidden beneath the myth, the teacher of compassion, the challenger of empire? To continue believing without question is to remain in chains. To question, however frightening, is to step into freedom. And though freedom is unsettling, it is also the only ground upon which truth can ever stand.